Hey everyone, I'm Tara. I garden here in Zone 5 in central Iowa. Today we are going to talk about glads, gladiola, gladii, and how I managed to work these into my wrapped market bouquets. I don't consider myself a professional when it comes to glads. This is my fourth or maybe fifth year growing them. I grew them up around my house, just in my landscape, a few years. I know this is at least the fourth year though I've had them. Oop, bumblebee found the found the bucket of blooms. I know this is at least my fourth year though growing them in a little bit bigger quantity out in my cut flower area. I'll put a little video up here. I save my corms year over year. This year I did not buy any new corms. These are all saved corms. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what I've done to be successful growing these, harvest time, and how I keep the thrips away. And then also just how you can use these monsters in a normal like $20, $25 wrap bouquet, with them really looking nice and fitting into the bouquet. Okay, so first things first, I definitely use Hortonova netting or I corral them because as you can see, even being in the bucket overnight, these have got some wonky stems. I harvest them when I can just see some color. So this is a perfect stage for me. Even if I harvest these on like a Tuesday or Wednesday, these are perfect for weekend bouquets. So just a little bit of color showing is a great way. I don't cut these super deep. I leave quite a bit of stem in the field. I find that in the late summer when I go to dig these, it's easier to have a little bit of stem left. This one would generally be too far gone for me to cut it, but you certainly could for your own personal use or even for like a funeral arrangement or something that needs to look great for the next couple days. I also love to cut these in this stage and this stage. These are the ones we're probably going to be using today in a larger arrangement. But I did a bunch of wrapped market bouquets yesterday and I thought I should have set up the camera because I had a lot of questions on glads. One is how I use them in bouquets, which we are going to look at real time today. One question was harvest, so I showed you just a little bit of color, and these are going to continue to open. Now I'll show you when I do bouquets. Sometimes I snip off the top to make it more proportional with the bouquets. I'm also not afraid to take off the bottom bloom or two, knowing that they're going to keep blooming. This is going to push a bloom all the way to the top. Let's see, these look pretty good. This was out in the rain last night, but I'm not afraid to take off some flowers if needed. I think this is the one I'll use in my sample wrap bouquet, but again, I did 15 of these yesterday with blooms that were this open to this open. And then someone asked me about thrips, and the first couple years I grew these, I had thrips so bad I couldn't use them. I cut them and threw them away. I don't know that this is the case everywhere, but after that first year or two when I had so many thrips, I started watering the heck out of them. I read somewhere that they like deep and often watering, and I noticed 2 years ago now, or was it 3? Get my years confused. When I watered deep, I didn't have any thrips. Last year, again, either natural rainwater or me watering them deeply, I would say the equivalent of probably an inch a week, no thrips. This year, we've had so much rainfall. Now we're just in July here, but so far, no thrips. The only bugs that I have seen on these are cucumber beetles. And I see a little bit of petal damage on this one that's open. But if you harvest them in this stage, you're not going to get most pest damage. Now, if you do have thrips, when I was even harvesting early, those first couple years, as they would open, they had a lot of thrip damage, the kind of white threading through the blooms. But generally, if you aren't dealing with thrips, harvest them at this stage. So any other garden pests, beetles, things like that aren't going to chew on the petals. First off, let's do a really quick wrap bouquet. Now, when I'm doing wrap bouquets, they're retail bouquets. I'm doing quantity of them, so I have to do them pretty quick. I generally lay out my ingredients and then I just go down in kind of an assembly line fashion. That's often called having a bouquet recipe, so you know what you're putting in each bouquet, you have it counted out, and you're ready to go. Now for this particular one, since I did a bunch of those yesterday and I didn't film, we're just going to do a sample one just so you can kind of see how I'm using the Glad in those types of bouquets. The wind has really picked up here. So in my bucket for greenery for this one, I have Sweet Annie. And then I also have some Cosmo greens. And I think between these two, that's what we're going to go with the bouquet. Now I often do kind of a handheld, the spiral, spiraling the bouquet as I do these. I think for these, I'm just going to do more of kind of a flat lay in my hand, meaning the back is going to be greenery, and then I kind of build off of that, and I'm going to put the main focals, which the Glad is one of them, in the front, and then I'm going to wrap it just to kind of show that way. Now the customer will probably want to rearrange this a little bit when they get home. Let's see, so I have my base of Sweet Annie. I didn't do piles, and I probably still should have because we're going to have a mess. And then I'll come through and layer in some yarrow. I like to work in 3s generally. If it's a large bouquet, I might work in 5s. Sometimes I would just put a single flower. I find that better, especially with Glads. If you use 2 Glads in a bouquet, I think it looks like ears. And I'm not a fan of that look. So I will use 1 or 3 or 5, but generally not 2. All right, I have some status that I am going to add in here. This has been a rough year for status. I think it's because of all the rain. Status doesn't like all that moisture. So a lot of my status is brown right now. What I do for them is I just keep harvesting, just keep trimming back, even if I have to throw it away. And then once we dry out, which I just can't believe we're still going to be this wet in August, then it'll push some good blooms. So kind of making a fan here so far. And then we're going to come in with a few zinnias and put those at varying heights. 2, or you could do 3 because we're going to put our Glad in the middle, and that kind of creates a 3rd here. I always like to add some white, as you probably know by now. The little pops of white right now for me are pincushion or the annual scabiosa. Like to kind of float those up and away. Let's see. And all discombobulated here. And then I might bring in a little bit of peach with a dahlia or 2. These are just starting for me. This one actually has 2 blooms on it, so we get 3 just with the 2. I think I will add a 3rd zinnia if I have a taller one. Let's see how we can work that in. So this is different than the general spiral where I'm turning my hand, but I think this works for Glads. I also cut some straw flower, which we may tuck in here and here. Definitely adds to the peach. And then I'm going to use this Glad. It doesn't match as well as I would like. I think it's going to be okay because it's going to pull the lighter from the zinnias. But I want to use it as an example because it's a little more open. So you saw me take, I think, 3 flowers off the bottom. I'm going to nestle it right in here. Now this one is not too tall because it was already so blown out. That's a little bit longer. Let's see if I can get a good shot. So I would just trim that. And then I'll show you how to wrap it here in a second, but I want to show you, generally the Glads aren't this open when I'm making market bouquets. and they look a little bit more like this. So if it's just starting to open, I still nestle that first bloom kind of here near the base, knowing that these are going to open all the way up, but it looks a little bit awkward to have this up so far to me. So I come down in the glad wherever I want it to be. So I can still use it as a spike, but I'm just going to cut it down some. And I come into this flower a little bit and I just trim it off. And I don't think you can even tell that I cut that down. So then I'm just going to nestle this in. And that's what our bouquet shifted a little bit. Let me clean up the zinnias and the dahlias here a little bit. But then I will just come in. I'm going to trim my bottoms here. Rubber band. Something on me there. And then let me go grab the paper and I'll adjust our camera here a little bit. This is a square wrap that I've folded just on an angle. And then I just wanted to show you, I generally keep the glad front and center, lay it down here. And then as I'm pulling it up, my first staple is low, but I'm careful not to get that bloom. And of course you can fold it over like I generally would, but you can also open up your paper and make it look a little bit pretty where you can still see the glad opening up. So this is another option. Let me adjust the camera here. So here's a little bit better shot. I think those are pretty evenly placed. This one's a little wonky just because it was that second dahlia on the same stem. But this way it still slips into your bucket okay, but it displays pretty nicely. Now remember, these are all going to open up. Within a day or two, you're going to have some gorgeous flowers here of the glads up the center. Next up, I have an arrangement. Now, while I do wrap market bouquets on the regular, very comfortable with that, I don't do as many really big arrangements, especially in a wide mouth vase. I was asked to do a pink bouquet, like gaudy, bright pinks, all pinks. I did pick some oranges and corals just because I wanted a little variety in here. And then of course we have some white because I always put white in bouquets. But we're just gonna see how this one turns out. So this is, I would say, a good 4 inches across, a pretty big vase here. I did pick some Cosmo greens, and then we have our Sweet Annie again, and then we have a little bit, I believe this is Little Devil or Diablo 9 bark. So we're going to start with the base of that. I could obviously put a grid on top or some chicken wire in, but I think we're going to try and go natural for this one. Okay, we have sort of a big fluffy base, but I think that's what I need with such a wide opening here. I did pick one hydrangea because I thought my little pops of white were going to kind of be swallowed up by all the pink. So I think I want to place this sort of in the middle. It's a big element, so I'm not sure it's going to work being up super tall, but we will just kind of play around with it here. I think I like that. Not all the way down at the base, but definitely sort of within my greenery. Now I did also decide to use the little bit more open glad. But I will also, I think I have another one that color somewhere, don't I? Maybe I don't. Oh yeah, I do. This was another one that just grew short. So I think we're going to take advantage of that because it is almost blooming to the top already. Bright pink zinnias, which of course the cucumber beetles are all over right now. I have seen a few Japanese beetles, but they haven't devoured the zinnias yet. But of course it looks like it's going to be quite the year for the cucumber beetle. Even with an arrangement like this, I do prefer to work in odd numbers. And I think because we've got the stem length on these, I'm going to use that to my advantage. Sometimes I would put these a little bit closer to the vase. I have some other kind of fun add-ins. Let's see. I picked this colored status because I think it's going to kind of bridge some of the dahlias and the celosia with those real true pink zinnias. So let me see if I can pull these out. I think I probably have 3. And then I also have peach strawflower, peach yarrow, and then of course we talked about the white pincushion, some pink celosia, and then a few just interesting scabiosa seed heads. And that kind of rounds out what I have. Since I'm not doing big arrangements every day, I'm not using a turntable every day, but I do find this pretty helpful and makes the design go faster. This is not even a true florist turn table. This is just one I found like for $3 or $5 at Target. Works pretty good. Here I'm going to use that status to kind of help hold up some of my greenery. I don't mind the flopping, but I don't really want all the branches flopping. Next, I think we will place our peach dahlias, if I can get them out. So I have 5 heads on 4 stems there. I can't quite remember the name of this dahlia right now, but I wanted to show you what I'm going to do with it. So the petals are a little bit spent, but those centers are still really cute. I'm just going to pull the petals off carefully and use that center. Usually they aren't too hard to pull off once you get going here. Isn't that cute? And I desperately need a little bit of that variation of peach and orange, so I think it's going to work great. Now these are also on a same longer stem. I don't know if I'll be able to cut them apart with their height. I am not going to be able to cut them apart, so we'll just have to kind of slide them in towards the center. Hopefully you're hearing a lot of the birds and not so much of my neighbor, or our neighbor. He's about half-mile away, is mowing, but you can definitely hear it today. I'm not sure I'll end up using all of these. Oh, that one didn't get stuck in. Definitely working okay without a grid. It already feels like it's filling up. Okay, so we've got a bit of this darker celosia. My celosia is just starting. We've got a couple different colored dahlias that I think I might use lower to kind of fill in down here. See where we might like a pop of kind of fuchsia pink. And I think since these are naturally a little bit wobbly, we're going to use that too. Oh my goodness, I did it again. Since they're a little bit wobbly, we are going to use that to our advantage and kind of let it droop. Hi, Ellie. How you doing, girl? Yeah, you go lay down, okay? Go lay down. Good girl. Now I think this is getting pretty close, but I definitely want to add some white because that white just looks kind of like a lonesome dove there in the center. I haven't used the peach yarrow or the peach straw flower yet, but this is looking pretty full. I think I'm going to add my white scabiosa and see if I think it's done or if I want to add in those other elements. Now again, I love to float this kind of up and airy, just around the arrangement. I do the same thing in market bouquets. I love for these just to be kind of up and a little bit wild looking. This stem has 2 flowers and a seed head on it, and we are gonna take advantage of that. Lots of times when the flowers are quite small and I have a bigger arrangement, I like to double up. Just gives a little bit more punch in a single area. See if we can thread these through. Okay, let's see what we think here. I'm liking how it's looking for the most part. I think I might need a little bit more white lower. So I'm going to run out and see if I have any perennial scabiosa blooming that's white. If not, I'm going to grab a few more of these just to tuck in a little bit lower, to bring some of that white a little bit lower. I did have some perennial scabiosa, so there's the annual, there's the perennial. Now the other thing I could do is I could go out and get a couple smaller hydrangea blooms. That would add some more white a little bit lower. But I've got quite a few heavy elements in here. So I'm thinking this will do the trick. There, exactly what I wanted. A little bit of white lower. See, where could I work this in? Ellie, don't drink that water. Don't drink the water. Now just a little bit of fussing. I think we're good. What do we think? I'll get a few better shots here. I know it's a little bit dark under here. Thanks for joining me today. Let me know how you like to use gladiolas. I know some of these big, gorgeous plumes look great just in a vase together, but I think a more modern take is just working them into your bouquets. We'll see you next time.